So, your first speaker today is one of your very own, ninth quarter student, hails to us from Boston, Mass. This guy is very passionate about working with people with special needs, and he sees the benefit of the experience not just for the people with special needs, but for us. And he wants to share this message with you. This is his first time doing public speaking, but he said he's ready to jump into the deep end of the pool. So please welcome an incredible student, one of your very own, Scott Mitchell.
Is this on? All right, so who else is nervous? Okay, cool. So like she was saying, my name is Scott Mitchell. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a ninth quarter student, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I'm not a polished speaker like Tim Salties, and I'm not able to spit fire out of a microphone like Patrick Dunphy. And if you guys don't know who they are, you guys will find out very soon, for sure. But I am presenting in front of you today because I do have an important message to send. It's something that's very close to me, and it's going to affect each and every one of your lives in one way or another. So I'm here to talk about autism awareness. So by a show of hands, who knows someone close to them or has a loved one that has autism? Look around. Oh, keep those hands up. Look around. See, autism is going to affect more than more people all the time, and my hand is also raised. Let's see. So this is my older brother Jason when he was about 6 years old. He was diagnosed with having autism from a very young age, basically as far back as I can remember. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with what autism is, that's why I really like this image up here, is because it displays all the different symptoms and characteristics that someone with autism may or may not present with. Because it's a wide spectrum, so people are always different whenever they have autism. Let's go to the next one. So, a little bit about my brother. So, my parents knew from a very young age that Jason was special because he didn't behave or act like most kids. So, a couple examples of that is that his vocabulary was extensive. Instead of saying that he was angry or upset, he would turn to my dad and say, "Daddy, I'm vexed." Like, what kind of child uses the word vexed? So, he was also very obsessed with following routines and having everything in an organized fashion. He's actually still like this today. And he was known for throwing temper tantrums anytime something fell out of routine or wasn't organized anymore. So now instead of throwing temper tantrums, since he's an adult, he just gets very anxious instead. So he still likes following routines. Motor skills delay. I could talk about this for an hour. So he was very delayed when it came to his motor skills, and that's what caused him to not learn how to ride a bike until he was about 11 years old with professional help, and he wasn't able to learn how to drive a car until he was 23 years old. In fact, we used to have those little electric Jeeps. You guys ever see those like for kids? We used to have those little electric Jeeps growing up, and Jason was not allowed to drive it because he had no idea where his body was in space, and he had no idea how to really control his physical movements. So that's another thing that describes him. And cross crawl is huge, especially for all you nervous system nerds. Everyone knows how important the cross crawl motion is for brain development, right? Jason went straight from laying on his belly as a baby to walking. So he never learned how to actually crawl. So he never got that brain development, which I found out as I was doing this presentation, which is pretty cool. And the most distinctive characteristic that really kind of defined this diagnosis was that he was not very social. Growing up, he wouldn't want to play with other kids. He wouldn't play with other adults. Instead, he liked to play with different objects, but he always was kind of to himself in his own little world. So, Jason's the oldest of four. There's Jason, my younger sister, and I. We're all about 1 year apart, with my little brother Josh coming up 4 years after. And we're very lucky, very blessed that my parents were very loving and understanding when it came to Jason because he was different. And they taught us from a very young age that your brother is special, but we need to love and care for him no matter what, because he's your brother. But what I heard when they said this to me was, your older brother is special, and you need to take care of him and always make sure that he's safe. So that responsibility and that protective instinct has stayed with me throughout my entire life, and I have Jason to thank for that. Growing up with Jason, I had to learn new ways of communicating so I could socialize with my older brother. These new communication skills have stayed with me throughout my entire life, and I have Jason to thank for that. I had to learn new strategies to understand the way he was thinking and the way he was feeling, because it's very different when you have someone with autism growing up. And I've used these skills in many different aspects of my life. And again, I have Jason to thank for that. Now, if you look at this list of attributes, do you think those are something that would separate a good chiropractor from a great chiropractor? Does a one-legged duck swim in a circle? Yeah. I love that, man. All right, this is a big one. Jason learned how to adapt to a world that was not created for autistic people. I'll say that again. Jason learned how to adapt to a world that was not created for autistic people. What does this mean? What does it mean? This means that this is probably one of the biggest aspects that Jason's had trouble with in his life. A couple examples of how he's adapted to a world that was not created for him is that he had a teacher's aide growing up. And for those of you, everyone knows what a teacher's aide is. And they stayed with him throughout school to make sure he had some sociability and mostly scribe for him because his fine motor skills were not very good, that you couldn't read what he was saying. But the way Jason adapted to it is he got this keyboard that would allow him to type it out his own notes, that way he could read his own stuff. So that way he became more and more independent. And then as school went on, he actually requested to have the teacher's aide less and less, just showing that he wanted to be more and more independent. There's the sweatpants and Velcro sneakers. Jason wore sweatpants and Velcro sneakers all throughout elementary school. Can anyone know why? Because his fine motor skills were so bad that he couldn't button his pants and he couldn't tie his own shoes. And my parents thought it'd be too weird if a 10-year-old boy goes to the bathroom and then asks the teacher to button his pants or tie his shoes. So these are different skills, different challenges that Jason actually had to work on at home with my parents. They would literally practice putting on pants and practice tying shoes. So it's different things that we all take for granted. And then the sippy cup dilemma. This was a big one. This is actually probably one of the biggest adaptations he's had to make. Does everyone know what a sippy cup is? Just like a little kid sippy cup. So Jason would drink out of a sippy cup until he was 11 years old. And the reason for this is because the sensory input from his lips to his brain was so underdeveloped that he could never really tell how much liquid was entering his mouth or if it was even entering his mouth at all. So my parents wanted to protect him from going to school and drinking out of sippy cups because they thought that was a really easy way for kids to make fun of him. So Jason would actually go entire days at school without drinking just to come home and just run to the fridge and just start guzzling as much water as he could out of that sippy cup. So growing up, Jason was a pretty thirsty kid. But again, these adaptions, these are just three. Like he's adapted millions of different ways. But every single adaptation has two components to it that are all the same. They all required a whole lot of time, and it required a lot of effort and patience. Let's see, Jason's highs and lows. So Jason had a lot of support growing up, a lot of love from the family, and his life was full of a whole bunch of highs that were like way, way up here, and a bunch of lows that were seriously super low down there. Some of his highs is that he passed school, started school with his classmates in kindergarten, graduated with them all in high school, even though some people didn't think he could do it. Jason even went off to college and got a bachelor's degree in childhood education because, sidebar, he wants to help out other kids with special needs. It's pretty cool. And that's even though people said that he couldn't do it. Jason even lived on campus for a year too, which is crazy. And I think this one I'm most proud about is that Jason never got bullied as a kid, or even now as an adult. Normally, whenever you have someone with special needs, whether a kid or adult, they're very prone to getting picked on. I mean, everyone knows that. And Jason was just never bullied growing up because people just saw him and they just loved and respected him because they could see how special he truly was. So that definitely made my job easier as a brother. But for every high day he had just as many dark days. It all kind of started around 7th grade. Jason started to understand what autism was, and he started to understand that he was different. And this scared him. He didn't want to be different because he's a 7th grader. All 7th graders just want to fit in with their peers. And he didn't know how to go about this or how to handle this. I mean, can you imagine being told that you're different and not knowing how to change that and not being able to change that? And what do you say to someone like that? Like, how do you help them cope? So, he's had a whole bunch of depression and anxiety ever since that time. That's been going on and off and only been getting worse as he's been getting older. So why am I telling a group of prospective chiropractors about autism awareness? We all understand how powerful a chiropractic adjustment can be, right? We all were at well, not all of us, but we're all at the Wave, and we listened to Heidi Havoc talk about how an adjustment can increase brain function, right? So imagine if you take that same chiropractic adjustment and use it on someone with autism. What kind of impact would that have on their lives? Let's say you take someone with autism, you adjust them, and all of a sudden they can maintain eye contact longer with someone. Take that adjustment, and then their speech production increases. Take that adjustment, and then they can actually control their emotions. The possibilities are absolutely endless when it comes to working with someone with autism. Now, let's say, how does this affect someone's family, the family of that individual? You have a child come in, let's say the child's autistic, nonverbal, gets adjusted, and boom, is able to start saying dada, mama, anything like that. Can you imagine the impact that would have on the family if that child's now able to show love and affection to their parents? I mean, stuff that we take for granted, but to them, it's priceless. Now imagine the impact it would have on you. How much more confidence would you have in your adjusting abilities if you see consistently people change like this drastically? How much easier would it be to wake up every morning and go to your office and help and know that you're making a difference in people's lives? What kind of impact would this have on your patients that are sitting in your office seeing stuff like this going on? Seeing and being inspired by what you're doing to these kids and adults with autism. Everyone knows BJ's quote right there. But the chiropractic adjustment is a gift that we're given here at this school. We now have the ability, well, once we graduate, we now have the ability to change people's lives. You can impact the patient's life, impact their family, impact yourself, and impact the community. It's huge. Come on, man. There we go. Oh, this one. So usually whenever people think of autism, they think of kids with autism, am I right? But the thing is, you can't die from being too autistic. Like, autism is not something you die from. So these kids that are born with autism, they grow up to become adults, like my brother. And this right here was taken from the National Autistic Society, and they found out that about 16% of autistic adults have a job. Only 16%. That means about 84% of these autistic adults don't have a job. So what do you think they're doing with their life? How much alone time do you think that they have on a daily basis? What kind of thoughts do you think go through their head? They've made it this far, they've become an adult, they've adapted, they've done all these different challenges, they made it through it all, but now what? Where do you think they're living? What kind of impact does this have on their parents? What kind of impact does this have on their family? They would love to work, but are termed not the right fit for the job, no matter how qualified they are. One of those shadows is my brother Jason. And I was going to share this story, but screw it. My dad was on a business trip out here about a year ago, and he came out and we got to see the city and do a whole bunch of stuff, and it was great. And then I was driving him to the airport, and we started talking about Jason a little bit. And as I'm driving, he turns to me and he says, "Jason's losing the motivation to live." I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, Jason's just becoming so depressed and so anxious because he's one of those shadows. He started telling me how he's made it through all these different things. He's been adapting so well to a world not made for him. But now he's just getting rejected from everything. He doesn't have the same support anymore because now he's an adult. There's no teacher's aid. There's no support at all. And he said he's losing the will to live. So then after I dropped my dad off at the airport, I started driving home, and I was crying, man. Like, that's my brother. This is the same kid. Well, he's an adult now, but this is the same person that I was told I'm supposed to protect, and I'm supposed to keep safe. And now he's losing the will to live. This is the same person that has all the love and support you could possibly imagine. Same person that never got picked on by his peers. Same person that graduated high school, graduated college, learned how to drive a car. Same person. And now he's losing the will to live. And he had everything. Imagine those other 83 shadows up there. Imagine if they didn't have the same support and didn't have the same connection that Jason had. What do you think they're going through? These are the things I think about, man. So, we've all seen a picture in the bottom right. We've all seen something like that, showing the different stats. This one only goes to 2009, but 1 in every 110 kids born in America had autism. Numbers grown today to 1 in 68 have autism. And they're predicted that as of 2025, which is only 8 years from now, they're predicting 1 out of every 2 kids born in America will have some form of autism. 1 out of every 2. So you think it's important that we got to know about this stuff? Yeah. But see, back then with Jason, even before this, there was a lot more resources out there because there weren't as many kids with special needs, am I right? So what happens as this number increases more and more and more? More and more kids with special needs, less and less resources. That's why I put up that image right there. How many of these kids are going to be left behind? We have to accept that there's going to be more autistic people in this world today. We have to understand how they think, how they feel, and their emotions. And we need to love them for who they are. So now if you're sitting in the back studying for an exam that you don't have because it's week 1, you're going to at least look up and just see this image because this sums it all up. Accepting, understanding, and loving someone with autism will make you a better chiropractor. It will make you a better person. Never hesitate to get to know someone with autism because it may change your life more than you can imagine. The same way Jason's life has changed mine forever. Thanks. Not bad, huh?
It's hard to recover from that. The work we do matters. Every one of you in this room, you matter. But we need to move on to the next speaker.